there are definitely moments where I'm just like, I'm grinding. And I mean, people are like, oh my God, you've made it. I'm like, no. I was like, even the artists you see that are the big Hollywood, I was like, those are freelancers. I was like, what you forget, these are all freelancers. I was like, they are going in for these auditions or, they're just being offered parts. That's it. But everybody is still technically in some ways working gig to gig in some way. The hustle just looks different. And there's a team behind this hustle.
Hello. Seth, welcome to Unmute the Voices. You're here.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Finally. It took like forever to get you here.
I made it though. I made it.
I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, let's just get right into it. Third time around at the Grammys again.
Yeah, again.
Again. 2 nominations. What do you think?
As I've always said, it's never a given. The work happened so long ago, kind of when I put these records together, especially this one, which is probably one of the hardest records for me to do, on the Holy Presence of Joan by Julius Eastman. And I'm always just saying that I'm just thankful that people listen to it. You go in, I'm not going into it thinking, yes, I'm creating a Grammy-nominated or a Grammy-winning record. I'm just trying to get these notes down and capture the emotion. And I hope at the end of the day that people listen and enough people listened again and believed in the project. Yeah,
it's a great album. You're playing for a long time on that album.
I'm playing all the parts, actually.
Yeah. What was that like?
A lot of tears. I will always say that recording process, because this was the first time I was really doing this level of overdubbing in that way, or multi-tracking really is what it was. And the piece is originally for 10 cellos, and it's about 20 minutes long, the entire duration of it. And I kind of had a process that I thought was going to work. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do this cello part, and then I'll do that cello part. And then we started in that way and realized, oh my God, like just the writing for this piece is so thick and complex that I will be in here forever. I'll be in here for half a year trying to get all these parts perfectly together. So instead of working horizontally, I had to really start working vertically. So basically to throw whatever process I had away, just to line everything up. And I used like one of the cello parts, cello part 10, to kind of become my click track essentially. And so we had that all layered in because I didn't want it to feel like super metronomic. I wanted it to still kind of have a soul to it, and where it could still flux and flow. And then in editing, we can like move things where we needed them to. But the idea of kind of recording like this, eventually, like it was faltering just because each cello part is so virtuosic. It's not like bunch of people are just playing lots of whole notes. Right. Every single part is working so hard. So then I really had to start really working in this way with the producer, Louis Pesakov, to kind of put these things together and really try to mediate it in a way where I was really making these beautiful moments that could come out that you tend to lose in live performance because there's so much coming at you that it is fleeting. So this was a moment for me to kind of really make a version that could capture a lot of things that most people, even myself, because I remember over and over in the studio, it's like, Louis, I've been playing this piece forever, and like, I think people have been faking this section because I'm like, I've never heard it, or they've dropped notes just because it was so hard. It was so hard, and Julius is unrelenting in the writing for this. So it really took me a long time and by moving in this more vertical direction as far as how we like measure by measure or big chunks, but moving in this specific way. And then I would take this one part and I would add the next part and layer that in and make sure we still had kind of the same flow and all the music was moving in the same way.
So from start to completion, was it like 3 months, 6 months?
You could say with all the editing and mixing and mastering, about 6 months. But I was in the studio. I started in the studio, I think, in September or October of 23, I think is when we started this. Yeah, I
Mm-hmm,
think so.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
To put it together, and there was delays even before we were supposed to have started the recording months before that. But it was like 10 parts to learn, and
Wow.
for years I had only been playing
One part.
one or two parts that I never
Yeah.
played, and so it was like I had to kind of do like this speed learning, and in some situations I was like literally learning it and recording it in the studio at the same time, because like who has the time to learn this giant work and learn it times 10?
Wow.
Like to set aside my entire schedule, when I'm still teaching and I'm still performing all these other programs.
So let's talk about that. I mean, how are you able to balance, a very rigorous recording session or recording sessions, plural, plus performing, teaching, having a personal life? Like, how are you able to balance it all? Because on the outside, it's like, oh, okay, Seth, I see you, period.
No.
But it's how are you able to manage all of that?
Well, I don't know if I really managed it all that well,
I mean, it got done.
It definitely got done. I definitely suffered. I always say,
but you lived to see it.
I definitely lived to see it, but a lot of those sessions, like we basically had to really look at the schedule and look at also when the studio was available, and most of those times tended to be on the weekends or late at night. And I would go up to Sherman Oaks, drive up to Sherman Oaks, and do these sessions, and I'd just be Lewis and I. And it actually was Sheila E.'s old studio.
Oh, wow.
And so it had a good energy in it as well. But it was just Lewis and I in this studio, putting these parts together, me kind of really kind of coming to terms with like my perfectionism, but like the faltering of that, because it's like, it's not like, oh, there's these other people that have recorded. It's like, no, it's all me. Yeah, we need to do that part again because that one's definitely off. But also like trying to like not let it feel so stagnant in a reading, like trying to get it so perfect, but that it doesn't live and doesn't breathe. So how to capture that essence. So most of those sessions happened definitely on weekends, and I would be there all day from like 9 a.m. to like 7 or 8 at night. And, with lunch breaks and things like that in there, but just trying to get it and give myself space. And then during the week, I would be at work or I'd be on the road. And in between like recitals or concerto performances, I'm like trying to like learn this other cello part and like trying to slowly chip away at it. So, and we kind of built it out. We'd have like this recording block, and I knew I would be just focusing on these cello parts. And then the next session, I'm recording these things, and the next one like that. So I had to really look at the entire schedule and figure out where do I actually have time to learn these parts, and also put everything else I have to do in my life also in the forefront as well.
So, I mean, balancing that with teaching, you teach at USC in LA, and also just having a very busy concert schedule, I would say that everything is just somewhat regimented in order to get it all done.
Oh, yeah. And then I still had to be flexible because, then I'm supposed to go to the studio, but something happens at school. So I'm having to leave later. And so coordinating with the producer but all that's like, time is money. And it's like, I'm trying to make sure I'm still getting to the studio on time, just so we get the right amount of hours and we're not going over budget.
So do you feel like all of this hard work, because clearly you've been working really hard, do you feel like it's all just paid off or is paying off because you're at the Grammys again?
I think it's paying off, and people have really taken a liking to the recording and are using it, and they're creating new work. There's multiple dance companies that are using this recording now to create new work from it. So it's beyond what I expected it to be in that way, or it's being sampled for other TV shows or radio shows and things like that. So I'm thankful for that, but I didn't go into thinking, oh, these things are going to definitely happen after this thing comes out. But I'm getting to also perform it, because in the recording process, it was always the idea that I'd create this studio version, but also I would have all of these parts basically fixed now, and that I could take this piece as like a piece for cello and tape, or just all like pre-recorded parts, and I could then perform and tour this version of it by myself without having to have the other 9 cellists with me. Yeah.
Well, The Grammys are in a couple of weeks. One thing that I do know about you is the fashion. You're going to be bringing the fashion at the Grammys. Last year, you were in Vanity Fair. You were on the red carpet.
That wasn't planned. That just happened.
Because it just happened because I'm... So are we planning to have a return in Vanity Fair or Vanity Fair?
We'll see what happens. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what the
what you wearing, Seth?
You're all gonna have to wait to see. But I'm working with similar designers, a designer I've worked with for a bit of time now. We worked on a huge series of commissions for my performances with the New York Philharmonic and the Montreal Symphony. So I came back to him again to kind of develop another look.
Can we get a clue into what this look is going to be? Is there a theme or...
There is a theme.
Oh, okay. A love theme? No, celebratory theme? What is it?
I mean, it's taking its cue from the title. So it really is, it is deeply inspired by the power of Joan d'Arc. Yeah. So it takes very much so from that, and there's elements of dandyism, which is something I've been working a lot in, and aesthetics. And then I'm looking very much so kind of at the empowerment of material. And so I'm working with another designer from Ghana and some pieces that he's created. So there's a little bit of there are multiple hands in this look. Yeah.
What's it like being on the red carpet?
Okay, so from what the public sees is not what it actually looks like.
Okay.
It is absolute mayhem.
Yeah.
Because there's this giant room, and that's actually where the carpet is, but it's like every single like podcaster, publicist, the entourage, the artist's friends, et cetera, and all the interviewers, all on this long thing. They're all kind of they've got these little booths, and they're all kind of crammed in there. And you're going from one to the other to the other. And then eventually you get to like the main Getty Images section, where all the main photos are taken. So it's packed and it's warm. Very warm. So the idea that people look, the energy is electric. It's absolutely electric, and you're seeing people like celebrities, you're seeing friends, you're seeing colleagues. Everybody's kind of there, but it's not like, oh, this is the red carpet for the classical musicians. This is the red carpet for the world music. No, it's like everybody is there. So there's a lot of people you don't know, and there's a lot of people you do know, but everybody is somebody there in that room. And so you're just moving through kind of like cattle, very well dressed cattle. And then you get your photo taken. They're like, all right, and next. And then you'll do the stop and repeat if you want to, if they have time, if it's not being taken over by too many people. And then you're out, and then you go into the main arena. And then,
Is there anything that you are anticipating or hoping happens besides winning at the Grammys?
This year, I hope I actually eat more food. Because
it's so long. It's such a long day.
Long, and the classical division, part of the jazz and part of world music, narration, all of these, I would say they're still big categories for a lot of us, but they're smaller in comparison to all of the pop categories. Right. They happen in the earlier part of the day, around noon. And so by the time that lets out, depending on when you decide to go to the red carpet, usually I go directly to the red carpet and go directly in, just so I don't have to deal with any of that. But usually by the time it all lets out, it's time to go over for the main event. And then you're starving by that point.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's no real intermission.
No, it just goes.
And the classical division is like towards the end.
In the end, so you're sitting and you're waiting. Yeah. Or you leave and try to go find food. Yeah. And this year I'm going to be smarter about it.
What are you doing?
I'm going to try to find food earlier.
Yeah. I'm going to be with you.
I'm going to do the red carpet, and then I'm going to eat. Immediately, because the last year it's like, okay, yes, I'm gonna stay trim as I can, because the photos are coming. No, this year I'm like, okay, we're gonna eat this year. We're gonna
Well, when we were there a couple of years ago together, that was a lot of fun. Yes. Curtis Stewart was there, who's also been nominated twice in the same categories as you. Yes. And Hillary Hahn was also there too. So that was a lot of fun seeing them.
Indeed. I was wishing Hillary was going to be there this year, but she won't be there. But I think it's still going to be an amazing year. I mean, I know they always say it's the biggest night in music, and it really is, because it's like, I think some people have different types of weights they give to the Grammys. For me, I'm always just like, I'm here. I never even imagined I'd ever even be in this room with all these people, and many of these artists that I love just even listening to, I'm just a fan of, and we're all here celebrating. I know there's political and there's like, electric energies because everybody's wanting to win, but I'm just excited to be here and to celebrate also my friends and artists that I absolutely love. And if on top of that I also win, wonderful.
Listen, do you remember 2 years ago, there was a guy who had been, he came out, I think, to present someone, and they said 9-time nominated Grammy artist.
Yes.
And I was like, 9 times?
Yes.
So, yes, I'm hoping that you win so that you don't get to 9 times.
But also, I mean, but you look at someone also like Beyonce, she's
that's true.
Over 100 nominations, and then multiple wins on top of that. So I think it's also special to even just to have that many nominations. It's also wonderful if you eventually also win too, but so much gets played into all of that. But for the field to also recognize all the work that you're doing. Yeah.
You've had an enormous year. Well, actually, the last couple of years have been really enormous for you. You made your debut with the New York Philharmonic. You're getting nominations for the Grammys. I mean, you're playing all over the world. You just got back from South America a couple of days ago. I mean, how does it feel to be, lack of a better word, in the prime of your career right now? Do you stop and think like...
I do. For a while, there are definitely moments where I'm just like, I'm grinding. And I mean, people are like, oh my God, you've made it. I'm like, no. I was like, even the artists you see that are the big Hollywood, I was like, those are freelancers. I was like, what you forget, these are all freelancers. I was like, they are going in for these auditions, or, they're just being offered parts. But everybody is still technically in some ways working gig to gig. In some way, the hustle just looks different. And there's a team behind this hustle.
Hello.
As in difference from if you were just starting out or whatever.
Right.
But I never imagined. I mean, I dreamt that, when I was a kid, I used to, like, my grandmother used to have like huge subscription to National Geographic, and I had this little shoebox, and I would like, don't do this, but I used to tear out the pages.
Like vision board, kind of. Yeah, me too.
Of places I wanted to go and see, and countries and cities. And so, and the cello has really been my ticket to do all of that. But I never imagined that the career was going to look the way it was. When I was first starting out, like in college and studying and thinking that I was really going to go into music, I thought my dream was to become this big solo, like classical soloist. I'm going to be playing these classical concertos all over the place. It didn't turn out that way. I mean, I'm
turned out better.
I think it turned out better. I mean, and I'm curating all over. I'm teaching. I'm performing all over. And I'm getting to do the things on my terms.
But let's break this really down of what it means to curate. You are working with videographers. You're working with producers. You're working with sound engineers. You're working with choreographers. You're working with visual artists. You're working with composers. I mean, like, yes, that is bigger than a classical music traditional solo career because you have such a body of work that enables you to use so many of your skills that I think is just much more fruitful and more engaging than just playing Haydn concerto on stage and then being done. No shade or disrespect to those who decide to go that path. But I mean, what an amazing opportunity to be able to really just bring your full self to the industry.
And that has been a journey in and of itself.
Yeah.
Because I tell this to my students, for years I was just playing all these old dead composers, and that was the training, that was the path that was laid out. This is what you do, this is how you get the job, blah 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 blah. And not realizing that I actually really love, or it's exciting for me to also champion the voices that are actually right now, and instead of all the I live in this little bubble that's from 250 years ago, but I'm in 2025 or 2024, and there's all these other things happening around me. But, I don't see that. I'm only just doing this thing. And I think that it's a shame that you don't also know what else is going on, what else is happening, what is being created right now also. And so I made that choice, some time ago. And I think part of that was through the encouragement of a few specific teachers who were also champions of current work. So they really encouraged me to try my hand at it and figure out, but there still was no road that was paved for that. I still had to kind of trial by fire, figure all this out, fail at a few things or many things, and learn from that. Okay, so what was the outcome that was actually successful from that, and then how do I build on that thing, and still have my ear to the ground of as far as what's happening and what artists outside of music or in music that also can inspire new work, either for me or for someone else, etc.
Unmute the Voices is sponsored by Key to Change Studio. Key to Change Studio is a violin and viola studio located in Renton, Washington, which allows middle and high school underserved students living in South King County an opportunity to take violin or viola lessons. For more information, visit their website at keytochangestudio.org. Now, back to Unmute the Voices. What are you excited and nervous about as an artist?
I think the thing that a lot of people don't talk about enough is staying true to who you are as you progress through whatever notoriety you have, and then staying current enough. But I think as I've gotten older, I've let go of the idea that, I always need to be relevant. I always need to be current, because I see it even with my old teachers, there is still validity in what they do as they get older, if not even more validity, because they've come through already and they've seen more than, you're seeing a snapshot of where they are as performers, as teachers, as people, and you don't get the full kind of timeline of everything that they've done, the things that they tried and then they let go of. So for me, it's how do I keep going? And staying true to kind of the things, and also realizing that this just may be a new season for me, and then many of the things that I tried out and experimented with and stuck with for maybe a decade, that it's not serving me anymore. And I think I have arrived into this new season now in my 40s, and so because I remember I was watching some videos of a performance, and these were pieces that, for years I was championing these crazy contemporary, new complexity, highly virtuosic works that were killing me in some ways. And I was I was listening to them again. I was like, you know what? I used to live for this music. And I literally had to turn it off, because I was like, I don't want to hear this anymore. I'm good.
You've just evolved.
I've evolved. I'm in a different place, but I'm also I'm also cautious with myself that I should still be able to jump back into that and still be able to do it, and not because I also exist in the academy, that there is a conservatism that's inside of it, that I have to make sure I'm not also losing myself and my own practice that built me to where I'm at now.
How does a person who is just starting out not lose themselves while trying to find their own personal success?
I think it's community. I think it is your personal community, which takes time to build and cultivate and extend, and thrive. I think that's really what it comes, because it's you have people that are going to be there for the highest of the highs. And then sometimes you have very few in the lowest of lows. And sometimes you're afraid to also show the lowest of lows.
Why do you think that is?
Because it's social media. And there's this idea of being current and still being there, and you're hot and da-da-da-da. And people want to see, you know, all the big successes. But, you know, when the lights go out and it's just you know, you have to be able to grapple with that and figure out, you know, okay, so what season am I really in, and who's here, you know, for me, and who am I here also for in these moments? And so I think that is part of the thing. And which is, I made a conscious effort, you know, as it relates to kind of like forward facing within social media, like what you present to the world, to actually really try to lift the veil and like show more of who I am, you know, as like Seth before there was a cello, before there was a career, you know, like to show those sides of things that everyday people, even like the fact that I flew here, you know, with no cello. I was like, this is how the rest of the world travels. Yeah. I mean, I don't have any kids though, so I don't have any strollers and all that stuff. My God. But I was like, oh my God, it's so freeing. My goodness. Yeah. Because there's a whole layer of extra things that I have to think about and deal with the cello and the luggage and making sure all this stuff arrives. And when it doesn't arrive and when things go wrong, or fighting with, you know, the gate agents over like letting me on with the cello the seat that I definitely paid for. Yeah. And it's like, so there is regular Seth and there's travel Seth. And I don't want anyone to ever have to see travels.
That Virgo venom comes out.
Very different person. And my mother has traveled with travel Seth. You know, Seth the cellist on the road. And that is a very different son that she has never met.
You get them together. You get them together real quick, don't you?
But it's like the cortisol levels are high. Okay? Yeah, they are very high.
Yeah. Cellists do not play with their instruments with.
No, but it's a vulnerable state. But it's like I have to learn how to kind of like keep that in check too, just because it's like everybody's going through something at the airport. But when I'm not with the cello, it's like this trip was like, it was really enlightening because I was like, oh, I could just like be. I wasn't like that other version of me because like I didn't have to be on defense in a way that I normally am. And it's just by habit. It's just like that alter ego just turns right on the moment I walk into that airport. And I was like, wow. I was like smiling. I was just walking there. I was like, oh, this is cute.
And the other thing is Black music. Yeah. You love some Black music. R&B.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I grew up on that music. I mean, like my father was a musician, and so like having the idea of live music, but also music for my people was just in the house, and they were rehearsing in the studio in the basement from like literally from as a kid. So I remember just going down, and then you know they had the record players with the 8-track tapes and the LPs. And so my parents, like that was like the beginning. It's like people like I remember yesterday you had. Someone asked the question of like what music, like how did I start essentially, and I had to tell the story of the Witches of Eastwick with the cello, and I like so it's not your traditional classical story, but also like I didn't grow up in a household listening to classical music, like not at all. That just wasn't like no one was doing classical music until my sister started. And then she was doing piano, and then she was doing voice. And then the CDs of Kathleen Battle and Jessie Norman and Shirley Verrett, etc., started coming into the fold. And this was like part of the early education in that way. And then my teacher was making like mixtapes, little cassette tapes, mixtapes of all these cello concertos and sonatas and showpieces. And so then that started creeping its way in. But you know, I was still listening to Bone Thugs and Harmony. I was still listening to SWV. I was still listening to Selena. I was still listening to all of this stuff was there, and the Four Tops and all this stuff from the Motown era. So that was my training ground as far as music and live music and harmony and expression and storytelling. So that's like the beginning. And then, so I guess at this point in time, I'm like 10 years ago, I really made an active effort to like figure out how do I also tell these stories in classical and classical contemporary music. Yeah. because we were definitely not doing that, and that definitely was not how I was trained. Also, is to be a storyteller in that way. Yeah.
Right. Who are your inspirations and influences now?
Like across the board or in music?
Yeah.
Oh,
just
my
across
gosh.
the board. Like, who are you inspired by?
I will always and forever be inspired by Yo-Yo Ma. He was a beacon for me coming up as a young kid. I remember his PBS special doing the box suites, but it wasn't like just him doing the box suites as another recording with all the Butoh dancers, and he set them in like it was music in place, essentially, like a mise en place. And it was amazing to witness this and the production, just as a little kid, just watching this experience on TV. And they did such an amazing job in all the interviews and the backstories for each different suite and all the different movements. It's like burned into my head and then I got the CD and I went to Barnes and Noble.
Yeah.
And so he is someone who has been kind of truly kind of like a champion just of music, regardless of style and genre. And then when he started the Silk Road, and then all of the kind of popular culture collaborations he would go on to do, what has still doing to this day, has been so inspiring after all these years, and he still remains a household name, regardless of what you listen to or what you believe in. Yo-Yo Ma.
Right.
And he was on, he was also on Sesame Street.
Yeah,
so he really has
been.
He's been this face for generations of people, whether they listen to classical music now or not. People know his face or know his playing. So he's one of those people that I continue to look to as someone that evolves and transitions through it. He was like, I think in his late 60s now, almost 70. And, he has been on the scene for so long and remains someone who kind of evolves with time, and the music and the music making evolves with that as well, as one would hope. So he's one of those. Kathleen Battle's another one of those. Nick Cave, the artist, the visual artist from Chicago, is another one, just unabashedly Black, unabashedly gay, unabashedly amazing at what he does, and all the sound suits and the assemblage of culture that he creates with his sculptural work as well. He's just someone I look to deeply with the idea of adornment and adorning the way in which you move through the world and how you're expressing. So he's one of those. Carrie Mae Weems is another one of those.
Oh, yeah.
The amazing photographer. Dawood Bey is another one of those. He and Carrie Mae, they've worked very closely together on a huge exhibition I got to see. Also based in Chicago.
Yeah.
You're from Chicago.
Yeah.
You have Chicago ties. And so it's these are some of the people or figures that I pull lots of inspiration from, that are also thinking about storytelling in interesting ways, and doing the work. And they're pulling back the curtains to kind of show you their real world lives as well. And we're watching them age and grow, and the ways in which they share, the ways in which they storytell also are changing. And we're seeing this amazing lineage of their process. And so I hope the same for myself. Yeah.
My final question for you is, you've been here at Key to Change before. You've worked with our students, and you know that we serve students who come from underserved populations. Many of the students are of color. Why do you think it's important for people to support underserved communities and students of color who are interested in learning classical music?
Well, everybody should have access. And I think many times, especially in larger cities, because we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
Like when I was coming up in Houston, Texas, it was I don't want to say it's a given, but it felt like it's a given. Like everybody has access to the arts. And, I went to public schools that had huge magnet programs, like really well-funded magnet programs. Everyone had an instrument. And you could choose any instrument you wanted. You could also do dance. You could do theater. Or you could do art, visual art. You could do creative writing if you wanted to. I remember I took a poetry seminar course in second grade. How many people could do that? And it was amazing to have that because then and these were not necessarily in hugely affluent neighborhoods, but that just happened to be where the magnet program was, which I think was probably also amazing that they put the magnet programs there to allow so many people to come from different parts of the city to this specific school because it had these programs. But even as a young kid, even at 5 and 6 years old, when I was starting the cello, that elementary school in pre-K that had a huge focus in arts and had a huge focus in sciences that you could even start at that age. So looking at it now with cities that should have this, and you have these communities that can thrive from this and be able to see something else or find an outlet for it, and they don't actually have that type of access, is it's I would say it's illegal, and it's actually it's a shame that they don't have it. And so that creating programs like Key to Change in areas that really where you saw that there was actually a need for it because you're from here, and to see how as times have changed and times have shifted that people can find an outlet and they can probably get closer to who they actually are and find out more about themselves through the arts. And that people, and civically, that we should be pouring more into these programs to make sure that people actually have all the possible tools to truly succeed and be able to tell more about themselves, whether they go into an artistic field or not, to have that as a bedrock for them to kind of grow up with.
Yeah, I agree.
And it makes them better supporters of the arts later.
Period. Thank you so much for coming on.
Of course, thank you.
Yeah. So we were talking about Grammy nominations, and I know you're a little nervous. And so in the spirit of the Grammys, we created something specifically for you that is actually a Grammy award. So here is your own personal Grammy.
Oh, thank you. Mom, I made it. Thank you so much. Yeah. Oh, this is so sweet.
So you can have your personal Grammy next to the real Grammy. I'm with the Voices Grammy.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Super sweet. I love that.
Yeah. So good luck.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
And thank you for watching this episode of Unmute the Voices. I'm Dr. Quinton Morris, and I hope you enjoy your day.